Welcome to Diversity Conversations, where we engage in thought-provoking dialogue to identify leadership solutions to today's most challenging conflicts. Streamed live each week, Saturday 9:30 a.m. to 11 a.m. Hosted by Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Strategist and CEOs Eric Ellis and Tommy Lewis. Join us and add your voice to this engaging diversity conversation.
Good morning, Greater Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky, the United States, and the world. My name is Eric Ellis. I'm the president and CEO of Integrity Development Corporation, and I'm joined by my good friend and brother,
Tommy Lewis, president and CEO of Make It Plain Consulting. Good morning, Eric.
Good morning, Tommy. How are you on this sunny Saturday?
Yeah, it's a beautiful sunny Saturday as well. You know, last week it was a little dicey, rain, some snow coming in. But today is a great day. Later on today, have a baseball game, supposed to be 70, 75 degrees. Looking forward to that as well. It's going to be a great day.
Excellent, man. Excellent. I'm so glad. Man, how you guys doing?
Yeah, we're doing okay. We're doing okay. You know, we had lost our first game against a big team, and they had played maybe 2 or 3 games before we played them.
Okay.
And then we lost a heartbreaker a few weeks ago. So we've only lost 2 games, but we are improving and getting better every day, not only as players, which is the byproduct, but as young men, how to weather and sustain loss, how to not take things for granted, right? Because we lost that heartbreaker because we were winning and we took winning for granted, right? And so we learned a life lesson. And that's why I love to coach, Eric, in teaching those life lessons within a short period of time.
Right. There's great lessons in winning and losing, aren't there?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Right.
With winning is basically the result of hard work and preparation. Right. There is some luck in winning. In other words, other team or other side has to make a misstep or mistake. And you take advantage of that.
Right.
So we like to win, not only athletically, but also in life. We like to win with grace.
Right.
Because we know we will not always have our better days or even our best days. And then when you lose, it can be because of a number of reasons, but losing is an opportunity for self-reflection, right? And so we like to not only go back to say, woe is me on what happened wrong, but look back to see what were the patterns that resulted that outcome.
Come on, consultant.
Oftentimes in the outcome, Eric, it's not the actual event that you win or lose. It's all of those things and days and months and years before the event. The game itself is your response to the event.
Right.
So we lost the game, that bad heartbreaker, because 2 or 3 practices before the game, we didn't practice well.
Okay.
Right. And that's the same thing in life.
Right.
When you find yourself in a situation, look back at your life and said, this was going to happen.
Right. Anything else, Tommy, in your week, man? How was the rest of your week?
Yeah, just real quick, man. Just had a great week working with a number of clients, Leadership Cincinnati, working with a company called Perfetti Van Mel, working with the Cincinnati Public Schools and some other school districts. But with Leadership Cincinnati, we did a full day training on inclusive leadership.
Okay.
Eric, it was a deep dive around inclusion, specifically on the topics of race and gender inequality.
Okay.
I was very excited that these leaders really jumped into some very difficult conversations.
Okay.
At the end of the day, we were mentally and emotionally spent, but everyone said that was time well spent together.
Excellent.
A full day from 8 a.m. to 5 o'clock. It was great. So my week, although it was raining outside, it was absolutely sunny inside of my heart, my mind, and the work that I was doing.
Excellent, Tommy. Lee Wong, we want to welcome you, man. Thank you for joining us again. As I talk about and think about my week, Tommy, this was my birthday week. So you know that the young people, I got 4 kids, the young people now will celebrate their birthday for the whole month. The whole month. I mean, what are we doing? I mean, just every day of the month is my birthday. Okay, so they sort of you brought me into a sort of that with a week-long celebration, 4 days, and so on last Saturday, man, my kids came to the studio and we wrote and sang a song together. And they had a producer and engineer come in and work with us, man. Just beautiful song, man. And he's finishing that up. So I'll share that with you as we get to the end of that. And then on Sunday, they rented out a sort of a movie theater and we went to see King Kong versus Godzilla on the big screen. So I had a chance to watch that, man. And that was awesome. And then on Tuesday, on my official birthday, my daughter did a cookout. And man, she made the best barbecue hamburgers, man, and baked beans and potato salad. Brother, I was in heaven because I told my kids, you can't really buy me nothing. So, you know, but all of those things were amazing. But the other thing that happened this week, Tommy, I would say that I had at a local camera store, Dodd Camera store, I had a bout with bias. That's what I'd call this. Now, the time before, just to sort of balance the scales for them, I had one of the most wonderful experiences. I went in there and there was a person of color in there, man, that just really gave me a wonderful experience, helped me answer some questions, made me feel like a wonderful customer. So I went in this last week and I went in this time with my camera and there was a young woman that was on the phone and she never acknowledged me or anything. And Tommy, I have a Canon. So I take the bag in there, you know, with the Canon label. I just put everything I can to be a customer. So I walked by her a couple of times, flashed the logo, like, you know, I'm a customer. I'm walking in front of her. She never acknowledges me. You know, like sometimes they ought to just say, hold on, just say, none of that. Right. And so so I wasn't walking far because, you know, you don't want to be treated like you're not a customer or give people a reason to go to somebody else and say you wasn't around. Yeah. And man, when she got off the phone, she never acknowledged me still. I'm right there close. She talked to another coworker and said, you know, I think I'm going to take a break now. You know, I'm kind of bushed. You take over from here? Yeah, I got you. And so I was like, what? And then a young white female came in. She said, oh, how can I help you?
Oh, wow.
Tommy, I didn't know what to say, man. I was exhausted. You know, we've been working with diversity all week. Now here I am in my own diversity story. And so I just walked away, Tommy. I mean, and I sat in my car for a minute and I asked myself, should I go back in? Maybe she didn't see me, you know, even though I was walking like right in front of her a lot. And I just decided to walk away and order my Canon remote off of Amazon. And comes to the mail. I mean, I don't have to worry about anything. But it's just, Tommy, it's just those are microaggressions that you experience, man, that just make the daily, you know, walk a bit difficult. With my clients, man, I had people in one of the webinars were the issue that's beginning to bubble up now, Tommy, is reverse discrimination again. Okay. So organizations, a lot of their dominant culture people are beginning to say, hey, all of our focus on diversity recruiting, does that mean we're going to be left out? And it's kind of like, wow, you know, so you have that bubbling up. In another webinar that I did, webinar went beautiful. Person called me afterwards and said, hey, I'm from Ohio too. Man, we're not doing good at all with this. I just wanted to let you know that no matter what people say, we're horrible around D&I. And so that was kind of disappointing. And then there's another organization where their leaders are really struggling, Tommy, and I don't know if you run into this very often, where the leadership really is struggling to understand that bias is real. And so they'll do something like a listening session, you know, or something where they'll ask the, you know, employees to, you know, field any questions that you have. And when they ask real stuff, man, they struggle to receive that. So that's a bit about how the week was for me. Good week. By Thursday, I was a bit exhausted. I told you. About Friday, man, I started writing songs. You know, I said, hey, I'm out. You know, I gave all I could this week.
Yeah, Eric. So that's interesting, and sad to hear that the implicit bias or the bias and bouts with bias continue to happen, and
Yeah,
they do. And
yeah,
I would say they continue to happen, and then we also continue to hear people rationalize away those biases. It is
right.
easy to say, "I didn't see you after 15 or 20 minutes." Right? It's easy to say, I was going on my break and I knew that other person,
Yeah,
right? Because
yeah,
we're not going to say, where do you know them from? How do
right,
you know? No, no, I just saw you not acknowledge me
right,
and say you're going to take a break. And then as you're moving away to your break, you stop to service someone else.
right.
Um,
I feel
uh,
like I get noticed a lot, like if I'm wandering down an aisle or something like that, and I got a bag in my hand, I get a lot of attention. Then, people looking at me, hey, is he trying to shop with something? Even at this age. And the thing is, Tommy, the difficult part for you and I is that we know how other people respond to those things. We know that we don't know with a certainty that that was any kind of a
right.
racial encounter. We don't know. And that's part of what's exhausting is that you have to consider that. And this time I was intentionally, because, she wasn't giving me any eye contact, that made me say, I need to walk back and forth in front of her and stay close. So it wasn't like I was like out in the store somewhere. So, but then at the end of the day, man, you just take your money and you spend it somewhere else. And so what I want to have us open up with, and I see Lee Wong says that he had the same experience, with a post office clerk and those microaggressions. And certainly other people can experience them for other reasons. Sometimes bad customer service. Sometimes because they think you're poor or whatever. We make these choices or these decisions based upon visually sometimes what we see. And Tommy, as you said, sometimes the people aren't even consciously aware of it. It's an unconscious bias, but nonetheless, it really kind of weighs down because I had driven all the way to Kenwood, and then I had to make the decision. Am I going to say something? Am I going to call a manager over? But you know what I did, Tommy? I played out the whole tape. And you know what I saw? I saw it could get worse.
Yeah.
That's what I saw. I said, why would I spend any more energy on that? Because if I went back and tried to tell her, she probably said, I didn't notice you. Or if I called a manager over, they said, well, we don't operate like that. Now my day gets worse. So I
Yes.
actually cut my cost by saying, just walk away. Just go and
Yeah.
walk, take your bag, your camera, order it off of Amazon. And that's what we ended up doing.
Yeah.
So the thing that we kind of want to start with, Tommy, is just a sort of an analysis. We're going to talk about some of the things that are happening in the news. President Biden just gave his State of the Union, and he was then flanked by Vice President Kamala Harris and Nancy Pelosi, the majority leader in the House. And so I thought it was a good speech. I thought he did a decent job. My question for you is, are President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, are they able to facilitate more bipartisanship, or are people working together better in government? Yes or no? And where are we as a nation?
I think the jury is still out, Eric,
Yeah.
on if they're able to, kind of negotiate those relationships from a bipartisan perspective. I think that because President Biden is, behaving like uh, presidents of the distant past, and that is fairly boring,
Yeah.
fairly legislative,
Right.
fairly governing, right?
Right.
And government in and of itself is a process that is boring.
Sleeper.
It's
Right.
it's not sexy.
No.
It is strategic.
Right.
And those who are in government, they know that just interjecting emotion every day, it's not leadership, right? Because at the end of the day, you have to govern for the people.
Right.
And so now we're in this kind of a lull of U.S. government behavior, and we don't know what's been effective from their cabinet. What are the distractors and the folks that are against it and strategizing against the plan?
Right.
We do know that the optics are more representative of America, the optics of this particular cabinet by way of gender, race,
Right.
ethnic, ability, diversity. We do know that.
Right.
So, with that being said, I believe that there are people within government right now from both sides of the aisle who are literally having to confront their own biases when dealing with these people. For example, we may
Okay.
have people in government still today on either side of the aisle who really don't value women at all.
That's right.
Right?
Right.
They will have them out as sacrificial lambs
Yeah.
to speak the view of the party, but then when the guillotine comes, they back away and say, I didn't know what happened, and she got her head cut off.
Right.
Now they're being confronted from the most powerful people in this country, if not the world, are female, are people of color, are people who are coming from a different generation as well. So they're not all 80 and 90 and almost 100 years old.
Right.
They may be 55 or 60.
Right.
Those are my quick thoughts on that.
Right. And I'll tell you, I think the jury's still out as well. I think that President Biden, maybe politically or sort of rhetorically, I think he was believing that he may have more ability to sort of force us to do what the nation desires and to be more bipartisan. But I think he ran into a freight train of intransigence. I think that the parties have discovered that they've determined that it may not be in their political best interest to work together. But having said that, Tommy, I really do believe that we're going to see some bipartisan legislation around police reform. And I know that a lot of people don't want to give, President Trump any credit for anything good. But I think some of the prison reform things that he did were positive. And I think that they seem to be continuing in that spirit. I think the George Floyd case and the Derek Chauvin verdict has really landed in a place where everybody is saying this is not right. And there were so many police officers that were witnesses against Derek Chauvin that I think the blue wall is beginning to come down a bit. And I was seeing what's his name, Trump's guy on the Senate, Graham.
Giuliani? Oh yeah, okay.
Graham. Yeah, Tim Scott is working on that legislation, but also with Graham. And Graham is in there saying, we had a great conversation. We never heard that in the last administration. Times where people said they were working together and they had a great conversation. He said, and then he said, oops, I don't think I helped her politically, but had a lot of respect for her. I saw that, moments of that from Graham before the last administration. And I just wondered where it all went, man. So maybe there is some hope, but I think across the country, people are feeling like, they're just sort of quieting down, but division seems to still have its interest and attraction. The one thing that Tim Scott did, so he gave the rebuttal to Biden's State of the Union, Black senator, and he said a number of things, but one of the things that he said was that America's not a racist nation. And then they asked President Biden about that, and he said the same thing. And so people are beginning to weigh in on that question. And Tommy, so I want you to maybe give us your thought about that. And so we're going to ask the community to weigh in. If you're here with us, weigh in. Let us know what your thoughts are about this. Tommy, I have sort of two questions in one. Is America a racist nation? And what does asking the question do to the hearer, depending on where they stand?
Yeah, that is a question that typically gets a response that is wordsmithed. The question is America racist? In other words, is the land or the country racist? Right. If you slow it down, is the land, the earth.
That's good.
No.
That's right.
Are there people that are racist? Yes. Are there policies and laws and,
Wow.
and rules? Yes. Is there a systemic racism whereby the rules, policies, procedures, and other languages that govern the people, are those policies systemically racist? In cases, yes. For example, when we are still prohibiting certain groups of people based on their tribe, ethnicity, or race from the equal and unbiased access to freedoms, that's racist. Again, legally prohibiting someone,
Right.
right? If there is a cultural practice like redlining,
Mm-hmm.
whereby folks who are trying to purchase homes and those who sell the homes, who lend monies for those home buyers, if they are all in cahoots saying we're not going to sell to a certain group of people, that's racist. If there is a policy, right, that or a practice that will legally divide communities based on one party or another's aspiration for the vote, to take a map and draw a line through and or around a community called gerrymandering just to get the vote, and you know what is the demographic of that community, to break up the vote, that's racist and that's biased. When you look, again, you look at certain communities, Asian community, Hispanic, people of color like Black, etc., and you break those up not only in two groups, but 4, 6, 8, 10 different areas, only because there may be an assumption that those people vote a particular party, or there may be knowledge that they vote a particular party. And we want to divide and oppress and suppress the vote. That practice, Eric, is biased and in some cases racist. But is the country, the land itself, the earth, the ground? No.
Right.
Don't get caught up in the wordsmithing.
Right. Excellent point. And I would say that, so then people would say, okay, that's a technicality. You know, I'm talking about the people in the country. But the thing is, then you'd have to go. So there are institutions. You spoke to that. I actually think that the better test is not to ask the question, is America a racist nation? It's actually to sort of do something slightly different and ask, where are Americans in terms of their own willingness to become allies when people face racism, racist acts, sexist acts? Where are you then? And that's the question. I think that when people ask themselves the question, in other words, how much effort have I put into understanding, empathizing, and working as an ally with people that are different than me? And I would say that most people struggle to do that. And I think that that's where we are, that people have no empathy for what's even happening to other people. They're actually exhausted about hearing about it. And I think that that is a real problem for us.
Well, let me ask you something, Eric. Because I was, unfortunately, I was unable to see the President Biden's remarks for his address. I did not see the rebuttal from Tim Scott. I do know that he is African-American male. I do know that he is, if I'm not mistaken, the only Black male that's in that party.
Right.
And I don't know if it's ironic or strategic that he gave the rebuttal, right?
Right.
But my question is, when you hear a Black man in particular state that America is not racist, what do you think? What lands on you? What resonates on you when you hear that from a Black man at a particular level of power and influence?
Yeah. So I've looked at Tim Scott a little bit. I think he's a little more nuanced than that statement might, but he's gotten a lot of criticism in the Black community. Now, sometimes white people say, well, Black people just criticize anybody that's a Republican. Not necessarily. When I heard him say that, to me, it's an unnecessary statement, but it really is in some ways pandering to his base, and it allows him to garner more, puppeteering. Song and dancing. Now you're doing some song and dance. You're actually on a stage again because you're performing for other people. So I don't think that is a look that you want to display. But I'll tell you, Tommy, I believe that from where he's come from and what he's seen in his family, he feels like, look at me. My life experiences in many ways could only happen in America. But you cannot take your individual experience, Tommy, and then sort of cascade that across everybody else and say that if other people did the work that I did, they'd be here. No, bro. No. There's some systemic issues that make that very difficult. And if you didn't have that message, then you wouldn't be elected. You like Clarence Thomas in many ways. And but I think he's going to do some good still. So I don't think that he's a sellout totally. I actually think that he's trying to do some positive things, but he makes those kind of statements that I'm not sure if they're helpful. I agree with you. We don't need to see what happens is when we start cascading rhetoric, all it does is keep us polarized and entrenched. And so you and I are working to build bridges. And so we know that language from us is not helpful if we're trying to build bridges. Is the language descriptive of policies, practices, systems, and cultures? At times, absolutely. At times, absolutely.
Eric, we have to, to get to the other side of division, there has to be an intentional effort on both sides, right? There has to be intentional effort, and there has to be some cultural humility. In other words, that if I am very proud of my culture, I'm very proud of being American, I'm very, very proud of the experiences that created my own identity, but I also know in my heart of heart and mind of minds that I don't know everything, and that there are people that I work with, live with, play with, that I really don't know. Cultural humility will say, I know me, allow me to learn you, to know you.
Love it.
And that is the step toward building the bridge that will come together over that chasm of division.
Right.
But then to build that bridge, it takes work and there's discomfort. What I do know is that of recent years, last few decades easily, and then even the last year, that people find comfort in their confirmation bias.
Mm-hmm.
They are attracted to things and messages and people who make them feel good about their beliefs, opinions.
Right.
Notice I didn't say facts.
Right. Absolutely.
Their beliefs, their opinions.
Right.
And so that belief may be that those people over there, they're just not working hard enough, because I watched it on television. How many stations do you watch? I only watch one. Oh, so everything you know is from that one source.
Right.
Yeah, and that's good enough for me. Affirmation bias. It's affirming what I already think. It's uncomfortable for me to have discourse with someone else.
Right.
And I can live in the same community that is somewhat diverse, but never cross the street, never talk to someone in the store, never. never will. And ultimately, if you don't take the effort, it never will be. We're having the conversation to make it happen.
Right. Let me say this, Tommy. I would say too that answering the question, is America a racist nation? Or is any particular company a racist company? Answering that question, yes or no, is almost practically irrelevant. It has no real practical value. Here's what happens. When people run to the rescue of saying, no, this is not a racist nation, what happens is that you don't actually address the reality. Here's what the reality is in this nation, in every nation, and in every company. Now, I hesitate to say every. I'm going to say that.
Yeah.
That you have some racist people and some people that are not. That's what it is. You have some racist policies, you have some that are not. Yeah. That's what it is. The real question is, the preponderance of, people, or where's the weight at? And as soon as we declare that it's not, then we're trying to invalidate some of people's real experiences with racism. As soon as we say that it is completely, then we invalidate some of the work and progress that has been made. So I don't think answering that question in a vacuum gives us much value. Lee says here, there is sort of no prejudice, bigotry, hate. There's no room for that, especially in a democratic country. And I would say that the only caution around saying that there's no room for those things is there is, in fact, room.
Right.
He's saying that we don't want to make room for it, but sort of the hypothesis or the desire runs into the headwind of the reality. And so sometimes we have to just make sure that we don't, because companies say that all the time. Our company is not a biased company. There's no room for bigotry here. Well, yeah, there is, because it's lived on a regular basis. And so we have to sort of be prepared to try to deal with that point. Let me continue, Tommy. Okay, so when we try to ask that question about Cincinnati, what's your thoughts, reactions when we try to put that same lens over our city? Is Cincinnati a racist city or not? And is there any evidence one way or the other? And I think that we've answered part of that, but what's your thoughts about Cincinnati?
So I think that Cincinnati has a historical biography or resume of its attempts to combat racism. All the way back to the days of the Civil War, the establishment even of this city just north of the Ohio River, the injustices that people of color, particularly Negroes, or even our German colleagues and citizens, our Jewish colleagues, our Catholic colleagues. So that's on the religious side, maybe even culturally. But there's evidence that there are peoples who in Cincinnati preferred not to live with other people. There was flight, continuous flight from Cincinnati, the core and growing communities that are now sometimes 30 or 45, if not 50 minutes north of the city. That wasn't by happenstance, that was by design. We don't want to live around you. We chose to go establish another community, a suburb for us. And as we are establishing that suburb, that community for us, when others come in, we will show and tell them how to behave, interact, live, work, and play in our community.
Right.
So it wasn't as much as we welcome you because we are intentionally inclusive. It was more, it's happening. We are minimizing the risk, right? From anything from the housing, schooling, recreation, right, as well as media, Eric, in
Right.
Cincinnati, just like other cities, there are certain things that happen in every community. Some levels of crime, some levels of injustice, some levels of disruption.
Right.
But there are some communities that you very seldom hear about these crimes and injustices. That
Right.
is intentional.
Right.
That's intentional. So
That's deep. That's so deep, Tommy.
it's a loaded question, just like is America racist?
Right.
Racism has no room, or it should not have any room. In Cincinnati, we are still grappling with this old country, right, of
Right.
America,
Right.
this old or older community, and its juxtaposition against the new norm of different people, diverse, etc.
Right.
I didn't want to use a whole bunch of words
Yeah.
to
Yeah. That's right.
say,
Right.
a whole bunch of words to say. It depends on what community you're sitting in,
Right.
who's around you when you're asked the question.
Right.
Literally.
Right. 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 And I'll tell you, Tommy, here's the difficult part. Here's the part that people don't want to absorb. It's easy to absorb the racist acts of others against you, sexist acts of others against you. It's harder to absorb your own acts that do similar things.
Ah, wow.
That's the difficult part, Tommy.
Yeah.
It's easy everybody's fighting over victimization, actually. My son is in college now taking a class that's looking at the history of Cincinnati and then some of the racial sort of acts that happened in Cincinnati. Every time population got above 5%, whites would sort of riot in this city. My son was blown away. He didn't know, wasn't familiar with the decision to drive 75 right through the heart of the West End.
Right.
And sort of just break that black community up like it didn't exist, like it wasn't nothing. Like it was simply a ghetto when you had all this vibrant life in that community. And he's sort of hurt today just sort of reading about that, Tommy. But I would say that every aspect of us as individuals where we have power or dominance, I think that we struggle to be respectful of that aspect or that trait that doesn't have the same power. And we talk a lot about race, the race aspect, because we are visual beings and because 75% of the information that comes into our brain comes into our eyes. That's why race and gender, sometimes religion, if you dress differently, those things get more attention and they happen more often because they're visual. I can see them. I don't have to ever interact with you for that to occur. But none of us should act as though we can absolve ourselves of our own work that we need to do. Even if we could say that my work is not systematically affecting the lives of others. I just think, man, that, yes, fight racism. Yes, protest, all that's fine. But you also have to keep looking at the nature of men and women. And sometimes how we will just be exclusionary. And whenever we get an advantage, we take advantage of that, Tommy. If it hurts somebody else, so be it. I'll never forget when my kids were coming home from school and say they were mad about some kid at school that was talking about them. I heard so-and-so was talking about me. And I always would ask them, well, have you ever talked about anybody? Well, that's different. Well, I think that kind of fits here, Tommy.
Yeah, Eric, as you were talking, a thought came to my mind, and that thought was, I think in our conversation and knowing us and others in the community, there's a burden that we have on us to try to solve these issues and try to address them, at least having this conversation. I feel the weight of my mind and my heart to say, how can we come together? Right. In the same vein, the question in my mind came up, that ignorance is bliss.
Right.
For those who choose to be ignorant,
Right.
who choose just to have the blinders on, Eric, and not really fully absorb the experiences of bigotry, prejudice, racism, sexism, and all that good stuff. Because I can think of a number of folks that I know personally who have no real response personally, emotionally, psychologically to the ills that are happening in the nation or the world.
That's right.
Right. So the murders, for example,
Right.
I've talked to these people and they're like, what are you talking about? Murder.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, you got people killing people, people kidnapping people. And they're like, where? In Cincinnati. No, they don't.
Right.
And I'm thinking, at times I would love to have that ignorance.
Yeah.
Right. But because I've been exposed to some truths, some facts, I'm digging deeper, and now I have the burden of wisdom, just like Solomon. Right. And Solomon was building his temple, and he had the burden of wisdom. Now that you know, you're responsible for what you know. It's easier just to say, I'm not responsible. I know racism exists, but I'm saying I'm not responsible. I don't know. I know it, but I'm saying I don't.
Right.
I think we have people doing that in the community.
But Tommy, you are saying something now. You're saying something, and it's a message for all to hear. That it's easier to sit on the sidelines sometimes, man, than to get in the arena where change is happening, man. And all of us have to dial in on that. Kendall, thank you for joining us, man. Kendall says, how different would this world be if people fought as hard for enlightenment as they fight to hold on to their ignorance?
Oh, my goodness. Yes. Yes.
That's huge. Kendall, you always come with these philosophical, brilliant, canon, really, of an idea, man. And I don't think we're there. I think that there's something that's soothing, agitating, energizing around fight and just fighting against stuff that affects us. And I don't think enlightenment is harder. Enlightenment has more complexity to it. Ignorance is simple. Ignorance is big blocks of information. That's how wars are fought. In other words, to fight a war, to be able to kill another person, then you have to sort of depict them in a simplistic way, an ignorant, simplistic way, so that you can dehumanize them in order to kill them. And that's sort of a variation of that is what we end up doing in these conversations, because the truth, the answers are more complex than just throwing up ignorance. Tommy?
Yeah, I would say that. I think, again, Dr. Wright, spot on. Said, folks do fight to hold on to their ignorance because that's their comfort. There's comfort in that. It is simple. It is ease. It is sometimes the learnings that were transitioned or transferred from another person or another time, that it's easier for me just to hold on to that past time rather than work toward a future time. And in this country, we have national pastimes that we hold on to that may not be relevant today. National pastimes, right? And let me just bring one up. For example, standing for the national anthem during sporting events. There was a time when we had sporting events and the national anthem was played and no one stood up. And then there was some groupthink, and we should stand for this national anthem. And today, at sporting events, whoever they are, play the national anthem. And those, like Pavlov's dog at the event, they stand up for the most part.
Right.
But those who are watching the event from their home as the national anthem is playing, they hear, are seated. So it's like, do you stand when you hear the national anthem during a sporting event? Because you're actually engaged in this sporting event, the national anthem is playing. Do you stand up?
Right.
Ignorance says, well, no, I don't stand up when I'm in my home. Who does that? Oh, the people that you say are patriotic and they stand up. It's simple to dismiss things like a pastime or a cultural observation or a cultural tradition. It's simple to dismiss it when it doesn't really benefit you.
Right.
That's it. Right. When it doesn't benefit you, when that cultural observation or cultural tradition doesn't benefit you, then it doesn't matter.
Right. Right.
So you can take a knee and kneel during the national anthem, and I will call you anti-patriotic.
Right.
The topic I know is about police brutality, which doesn't exist until I see for my own eyes that it exists. And it only took about 6 months for me to say, that's wrong with you kneeling, for me saying, oh, I was wrong to say that. Just 6 months. Come on. That's right. Ignorance is bliss, to have those blinders when we see the truth.
Right. And I'll tell you, the other thing that we've heard people say as a counter is that some people really have all of this pride and patriotism to America, the country, the idea, but not Americans. So that's been one of the criticisms, is that we loyal to the country, back to the soil, the idea, but we're not loyal to Americans and what they're faced with. I want to go back to Kendall's point. Kendall says, thank you there, Lee. Kendall says, how different would it be? So here's what I see also. Tommy, you mentioned before that people's behaviors are impacted more by their beliefs than they are by facts. And their beliefs are shaped by their relationships. So when, you say when people want to fight to hold on to their ignorance, they're not simply trying to hold on to their own singular ignorance.
Right.
Ignorance likes fellowship.
Yeah.
And so what we find is that people then are fighting to create a silo, a tribal group that we then will heap onto you rewards for reciting what we believe and stand for, and punishment when you go against what we stand for. Mm-hmm. So we're seeing people today are more pushed into silos. So we're trapped in our silos, emboldened by our ignorance and empowered by our biased self-interest. And we've got to get to a place where we're able to move beyond that. So what you're saying here, Kendall, is not just a singular thing. It actually, it's like a virus, if you will. And that's why people said that we're not just coming through sort of this COVID-19 pandemic, but we're coming through a racial pandemic, because the division, the ability of people to infect others and to try to get them on their side, Tommy, is part of what makes it difficult for us to make progress.
In my trainings over the last 15 or so years, Eric, I've led off in trainings, regardless of what type of training it is, diversity, equity, inclusion, or professional development, executive leadership, etc. And there's a proverb, an African proverb, that a person convinced against their will is of the same opinion still.
Right.
A person convinced against their will is of the same opinion still. And so, as you talked about, racism, people being, attracted to that ignorance or that system or those beliefs, we do not want to be convinced against our will at all. And if we are encountering a belief, an opinion, maybe even a fact that is against our opinion and belief, we may nod, we may smile, we may applaud, and then return back to our same behaviors and thoughts because we're convinced against our will. This conversation in our community is a welcome opportunity to either agree, disagree, move forward, or reflect. It's not to convince you that diversity, equity, inclusion is absolutely the right thing to do for everyone. That's not what we're talking about. In fact, in reality, Eric, it's just you and I having a conversation. That's what it is. I want to repeat that. In fact, it's you and I having a conversation. Others are listening, joining the conversation via the chat community, right? And we're just talking. Some of this we know, some of this we're speculating, some of this we're just reflecting. We're just talking. And then there's others that will get into an emotional hurricane.
Right.
How dare they talk to each other? You hear me?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Because we don't want the ignorance is saying that we people should not talk to each other.
That's right.
And that's not what we're doing. We're not creating that chasm or that divide. We're having a diversity conversation.
Right. And we're liberated to speak more frankly about our perspectives. And we've tried to walk around this topic from multiple sides and listen to multiple voices. Dan says, thank you, Dan, welcome. If I can't say no, my yes has no meaning. In other words, I think he's saying if we don't stand against some things that are occurring, then saying that we're for it may have no meaning. I get that. I think that that's one of the challenges that we face is when and where do you stand up? And in a more tribal society, there are often costs for taking a stand. And so that's why we're seeing people and organizations oftentimes sit it out. Let me ask this question, Tommy, that's a little bit tangential to that. But Biden said this in his State of the Union. He said that autocracies around the world are looking at America and laughing and saying our heyday is over. That, in other words, in democracies, we don't have the collective ability to find consensus, and it takes too long. And so they're believing that autocracies are going to see their capital rise. Is that a legitimate point, Tommy? Have we gotten to the place where division and fighting is far more appealing than working together and finding solutions? And I would say that COVID-19 and the cures around that is evidence of what people will do when they find themselves in a common difficult situation. What do you think? Autocracies?
Short answer is yes, Eric. Yes. Conflict and divide, especially from an economic perspective, is good for business. In this country, particularly, as well as the world, we've had 2 world wars. Yep. We've had a series, multiple country and regional wars that have been going on for years. Economically, there are countries, ecosystems, people who bet against other countries to generate energy interests, economic streams, political power, influence for their own country. If you were to go to Netflix right now, there's a documentary called Coded Bias.
Mm-hmm.
Coded Bias. It first starts to talk about artificial intelligence and what the world is doing with regards to artificial intelligence and these algorithms that machines are producing that is based on bias, right? Either negative bias or positive bias, etc. And then they slip into, in the documentary, they slip into government and how governments and stock markets and things like that really leveraged the downfall of certain countries.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that downfall was real, sometimes it was generated. So what Biden was saying was not just from his own direct experience in some 70 or 80 plus years. It was really since the beginning of civilization, where people would talk or speculate or brand another tribe or community as being less than, and that even the land that they were on, the people should not be managing that land, and we should manage the land, the raw materials, the policies and procedures. In fact, we should govern that land and those people.
Right.
What's happening right now in Biden's comments, I agree that there are other countries, just like America does as well, who will bad mouth or try to discredit the integrity of the country such that it drives down the value or perceived value of that country. Right now, there are other countries, Eric, that have resources, financial resources,
right,
that are buying stock in our country because of the perception that it's failing. It can be home ownership, it can be corporations, it can be nonprofit or civic organizations. Those civic organizations are failing. We'll invest in it, take it over, and then usurp the mission and purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So now that organization is not for the needy, it's for the people that we deem are needy.
Right.
It's loaded. It's
Right.
loaded, right? Because I can look at the list. Look, and I'm going to get off my soapbox. I've worked with organizations, Eric, that in their mission statement, and one of their top 3 priority goals is to eliminate racism.
Mm-hmm.
I've worked with them. The organization is founded on the premise of eliminating racism. How do I know this? Because they called me in because they thought that there was racism in their own organization. And in our assessment, we said, how are you going to eliminate racism out there when there's racism inside? Right. Because their organization had been usurped by racists. It had been overtaken by racists and was no longer their own.
Right.
It happens at a greater scale at the government level and the country level.
Right. And so as we talk about this, so here's my view, Tommy. Very interesting, deep conversation. My belief is that inclusion is the better way, and that there's always a temptation to exclude and to control or subjugate others. There's always that temptation. It's known to man. It's a part of, I think, our DNA. Is sometimes to sort of take advantage. But when you take advantage and when you harm another, you have to understand that they're not going to get over that. And they are going to fight back, because our natural instinct is to survive and to live and to thrive. And all we have to do is look across any dimension of this. Tommy, we could go to gangsters right now, gang members in our community. When you kill somebody else, you might be able to celebrate that for a day, but they're coming back. And they're not going to stop that. And they're going to kill 2 of y'all. And then you have to come back and kill 4 of them. And then they're going to have to. That's just what this is.
Yes, yes.
And so America, in its history, subjecting people to slavery and inhumane treatment,
Yep.
and then wondering why 400 years later, they're still frustrated because they're still catching a little bit of that. And now they got a tick. And so everything they see, they jumping on because of what they experienced. And so I think that we have to understand that inclusion is in our best interest. It allows us to be stronger. And I would say, Tommy, that there's even room for being inclusive globally.
Yeah.
With ace in the hole of protection. So I think that you have to be inclusive from a place of strength. Because I think if you're not trying to be strong, then you might find yourself exposed to the ugly nature of man that would seek to take advantage of you if you just humble, sweet, and kind motherhood and apple pie. And I don't see you guarding your flank, then I might just try to take you out and take what you have. So that's the world that we live in. It's the perpetual cycle of exclusion, subjugation, take advantage of, and then inclusion, working together, building something that works for us all. Tommy, do we ever find ourselves getting out of this, or do we perpetually find ourselves in the cycle and this pendulum of swinging back and forth from exclusion to inclusion?
Yeah, we find ourselves in the cycle, in the pendulum. We do. I think we do. And that pendulum from exclusion to inclusion is, once we get to inclusion, in many cases, right? And we look around and everyone is at the party. We may be dancing together, right? And then I see someone that I'm attracted to, right? And that person doesn't see me, but I see them.
Okay.
In my head, oh, all these other people are competing against me. This is in the room of inclusion.
Right. Come on.
Now I'm thinking, because of pride and ego and selfishness, that no, I'm competing. So now I try to separate myself a little bit, differentiate myself a little bit, and to put on my peacock feathers so that the person or the thing of interest sees me. Right? Now I may be unintentionally excluding myself, or intentionally excluding others by pushing them away, right? And that's when the pendulum swings back, and it doesn't always swing back with everyone swinging back to back and forth. Right. It's a small minority, right? But oftentimes, Eric, that small minority, especially if they have a loud voice, will get everyone to turn their head. Right. So over the last few years, this, 3 loud voices that I'm familiar with in the world has been the United States, Russia, and China.
Right.
However, with those loud voices, I would beg to differ that we actually heard from Russia or actually heard from China. We may have been hearing from them from another voice amongst us, America. That's the inclusive party that I'm talking about, and that loud voice that's projecting out about these others, right? It's a very complicated phenomenon,
right?
But without having the discussion, we are in ignorance. We're in bliss.
Right. Like, so let's come to our profession for a second. So I have a young woman that I met, and she does what we do. And so she had a client that she's working with, and she invited me to partner with her. And She has so much integrity, man. I really appreciate that about her. She invited me to come in, work with her client, but as president of my own company. And so, that's rare. I appreciated that. And so we had an event this last about a week and a half ago, and I was giving them some answers, from a 30-year resume. I was throwing some things out. And when I got done, Tommy, I felt like it was one of those weeks where you're tired at the end of the Thursday. And so now you don't have all the sugar and finesse to put on top of things. And so I said some things pretty, directly. And as I thought about them, I came back to her, Tommy, and I tried to fire myself.
Mm-hmm.
I said, look, I thought about that last conversation with you and your team. I said, and I really think maybe you should move on without me. I said, because I was thinking about it even in this regard. I said, when I was young, I didn't know anything. And I was just out here, Tommy, we just out there doing it, weren't we?
Yeah.
Doing it, man. Yeah, I'm a consultant. I hung a shingle. I said I'm a consultant. I start giving answers, and some of those were right, some of those were wrong. And I believe that everybody deserves the freedom to do that. And so I was saying, I said, I don't want to put myself in this role, but I said, what I'm saying to you is that I don't want to be the father that's peering over your shoulder and giving you advice that you may or may not want. I said, so I would recommend, hey, why don't you wrap me up? And I just want to save you to have to think about that time out. She said, no. She said, you have 30 years of wisdom. And she fought right back through that, like, you ain't quitting on me, know? And I just appreciate that, Tommy, you know what I'm saying? Because she saw the greater good of being inclusive outweighs my sometimes maybe saying to, because I told her, I said something to one of her employees, that I just reacted. They were trying to get the president to tell his people off. I said, no, we don't want that. But I tell you, that's what we got to be able to do, Tommy, is that we have to have enough of an underlying relationship that when differences appear, that we have enough to make it through that. Let me ask you on another topic. I want to hit two more topics before we go. And in the community, if you want to weigh in, we certainly invite you. COVID-19, Tommy, where are we right now? People are saying that we're beginning to see a dramatic pause where those that are left are sort of either vaccine deniers or young people that feel like I'm going to be okay anyway. They're not sure what the future of the vaccine might be. Where are we at in your view right now, and how do we get ourselves to a better place? And should we be looking at what happens around the world, example, India, as an example? If you don't get some vaccine, you can return to some of those things. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think we're in the incubation stage right now. That is that we have a large number of people, not only in the US, but across the world, that's been vaccinated. And so do we know kind of with empirical data that these vaccinations are keeping us safe? We just have to have a little more time for the spread to happen and not be infected.
Right.
The other is that the incubation is that looking at India with high density in population, such as certain cities in America, certain cities in Europe and Asia, right, South America, that there is a probability when we fall back on our comfort zone, our laurels, and not take the precautionary efforts, that it will blow up again.
That's right.
Right, it will blow up again. And so a virus is, in this case, a airborne virus is something that a highly contagious airborne virus is something that without precautionary efforts, we are literally preparing ourselves for continuous storms and a a continuous sickness and
Say it,
illness.
brother. Come on, preach now.
Yep.
Preach, brother. Right.
So those are my thoughts on it.
Right.
And again, those who chose and continue to choose not to be vaccinated, time will tell.
Right.
Right. Et cetera. So those are my thoughts, Eric.
Right.
In India, and not just India, there's some other countries like Italy, Greece, some parts of Europe, that there was a dramatic and kind of a significant spike in cases.
Yeah.
And not just cases, but deaths.
Yeah.
Now almost 18 months, close to 18 months after kind of some of the first spreads.
Right. And so let me weigh in on that too. And I'm going to tie it actually to inclusion. And so, Tommy, what's interesting, I think that the people in this country who are choosing to not get their vaccine are actually banking on the rest of us doing the work.
Mm.
And so their freedom then to act in ignorant ways is a result of us covering you. We spotting you. And I would say, Tommy, that you and I are it's rare that you live in a lifetime where you can literally see, it's like the death angel go through. We saw in March, and Tommy, remember when they were showing the maps and everything on it was red?
Yeah.
I mean, we're just looking at the map like, whoa, the whole country is
Right.
beyond the tipping point. And now we're seeing green everywhere. We are seeing a dramatic drop in the death of people that are 65 and older. I mean, it's down 80% or something like that, man. So we're seeing dramatic impact from these from the vaccine. I'll tell you this. I said I wanted to tie it back to inclusion. The other thing that you can't ignore, Tommy, is that if you let death happen over there, it's going to mutate and create something that's coming back to you.
Yes.
That's what we saw, man. Remember when we were bragging that we just had one case and then we just had 13 cases and then,
Yeah. Yeah.
Master took over and went rampant. So if you don't educate yourself and commit yourself to the safety of others who have less means, who are poor, who can't afford their own vaccine. But if you don't invest in that, it's not going to stay there. It's going to dance around and create something strong enough to come back here in a new way and kill you. So that's where I think, Tommy, it ties in the work that you and I do. We cannot sort of brainlessly, thoughtlessly remain in our silo, only interested in caring for ourselves and believe that that's sustainable, can we?
We cannot. Eric, you brought up very, very good points, man. It made me smile inside and think as well. And I reflect on, my process of getting vaccinated.
Right.
The 2 shots. And what do I reflect on? I reflect on, scheduling the appointment, actually arriving at the location, and visibly seeing the diversity of people waiting to get the shot and protect others. I saw grandchildren in their 20s, 30s, and 40s bringing their great grandparents, right? I saw individuals who I know for a fact were not born in this country. The grandparents spoke little English. The grandchild was the translator. It was amazing, the inclusion around a common goal, which was health and safety for all.
Yeah.
As well as the responsibility that I have to take time to do that. Right?
Right.
And so that veil of death that was surrounding the earth, right?
That's it, Tommy.
We have lost far too many in that, as that curtain landed and shrouded the earth. And now we have a few survivors, that then within the survivors, we're saying, yeah, you all still carry the burden of protecting me. I think that's irresponsible.
Right.
I think that's disrespectful.
That's exactly right. It's exactly what it is.
And I think that's arrogant.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Arrogant. And when we tell the story, the story of history, I wonder who's going to write that story. Is it the story that's written from the folks who have been vaccinated, the researchers, the experts, right, from around the world?
Right.
Or is it the person or people who believe that they were victimized that may articulate or share the story that death did not happen on this earth in a pandemic? Death was not an outcome of those who was infected by the virus. In fact, that this COVID virus was more like a common cold than the bubonic plague or the smallpox. Will they minimize this global impact? And that's something that I'm concerned about. And that's why I took the vaccine. I want to be on the right side of history, that I did my part, Eric, to protect humanity and not just call out collateral damage.
Tommy, I love that. And doing our part is a big part of why we're having this conversation. I want to tie this whole thing back to exclusion in this way. I would say to you that as you look at hesitation in the Black community to the vaccine, it oftentimes goes back to a lack of trust. And then it goes back to the Tuskegee study that we were utilized in, misused in. And so we lost even more confidence and trust in this nation. So the hesitancy in the Black community, much of that is a response of racism. But there's hesitation in the white community as well. And I would say that that too is a result of hatred and manipulation. And for political reasons, there are many whites then that have been subjugated, and their lack of understanding has been used against them. And many of them will die as a result of that, as pawns to somebody else's agenda who has oftentimes already been vaccinated.
Wow.
And so I think that we're back to where we started, Tommy, that the work that you and I seek to do, the work that we were called to, the work that we've committed our lives to, is about saving the lives of people by putting us together in a caring way and helping us dissect what's happening around us so that we are not ignorantly led in directions that are against our own self-interest. Might I suggest that getting vaccinated is a civic and moral obligation. And I think that we want to come at it from a standpoint of love. That's where I want to start with. I want to start by saying that I love you enough that I want to encourage you to get your vaccine. And what I've heard, Tommy, is that we as common people, when we tell others that we got vaccinated, then they know somebody that has. And I've seen people that didn't think that they were going to make the choice to do it, who are now willing to do that. So I think that we have to continue that effort. One last area, Tommy, so go ahead and make your closing point on that. Then I want to go to the Bengals here in just a minute and see what you think about where we are.
Yeah, so I'm not going to speak a lot about what we just said. I think Dr. Wright, Kendall is right on point. Out of love, et cetera. He's right on point, man. Civic and moral obligation. Yeah.
So Tommy, so help me, Tommy. I even hate to bring it up. I hate to say the word Bengals, because Cincinnati is so misused and abused over decades. Our expectations and our hopes and desires have been dashed forever. So now we come to the draft, and in the first round, we chose the amazing, tight end that's going to be the yin to our quarterback's yang. And so we've got a sort of a tandem there that's going to be dramatic, powerful, showy, interesting. But then he's got to have some protection, or he's going out again. And I think we did get a lineman, a tackle in the second round. What do you think, Tommy? Should we even? Tommy, give us your prediction. Should we even exhaust ourselves by increasing our hope at all for the Bengals?
Oh, this is a great question, Eric. No. No. Listen, we should approach this as being entertainment.
Right.
Entertainment. If you find yourself emotionally and psychologically invested in a product that's going to produce success, you're setting yourself up.
Right.
You should approach this by way of the draft, by way of the product,
right,
by way of professional athleticism or professional sports that you are not a professional in. So it's not your job.
Right.
You know, this is not how you make your living. It's not how you raise and support your family. It's basically entertainment.
Right.
Either on television, you're watching it, or in person, you're investing some time and dollars and maybe enjoying the camaraderie of other folks who want to be kind of pathically depressed.
Thank you for that hopeful ending. Tommy, let me ask you this. How much of this is due to us being a sort of a mid-market kind of sports, town? Are we destined to this because we just perpetually are not going to have the bankroll to compete? Or we saw Cleveland win, the NBA. We saw the Cleveland Indians win. They're sort of the same market. Or is it something that I know people like to throw off on the Brown family? I don't know them well enough, man. And what are your thoughts? Is it mid-market? Is it us sort of being a little bit conservative? You know, Cincinnati is conservative, and so almost in every way. So are we conservative in the bank that we're willing to invest to win to have a championship team?
So I don't think it's mid-market. I don't think it's that. Again, historically, even within the Brown family ownership rather of Cincinnati Bengals, that the Bengals have gone to the Super Bowl twice. Before. So, and we've always been mid-market, if not lower than mid-market, a small town.
Right.
So I don't think that's the case even today, 2020, 2021. What I do believe is that there is a culture of running the business that, because of our, conservatism, being conservative, it may play a part. What do I mean? That from a professional athletic perspective, especially in football, you have to have a certain personality to play the game. You have to be kind of a wild child. Right?
Yeah.
You have to not have all of your rocks and marbles.
Right.
And to play the game, you're not all there.
Okay.
Right? I played the game, not at the professional level, but I played the game, and I'm like, this is crazy.
Right. Yes, it is.
Right? Yep. Now, with that sentiment of being crazy, you can't always just turn it off, Eric.
I agree with that, Tommy.
So what does that mean? That means that if I own the business, do I really want to hire folks to work for my business that can go any direction at any time?
Right. Right.
Now, at the skill positions like quarterback, I want that person to kind of be the CEO on the field.
Right.
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 And I hope that when they take the Wonderlic test, that they pass it. And that test may be biased or anything, but at the end of the day, they need to have an even keel, and we'll surround them with kind of a barrier. Not only on the team, linemen, but the rules of the game will protect the quarterback. You have to understand the science of it. Other than that, yeah, that's a good player, but I don't want everything else that comes with them. Other teams, right, maybe even dynasty teams, Eric, they hire folks who may not have all their marbles,
right,
and they let them know that you will never be bigger than the culture of winning here.
Okay, Tommy.
That means,
wow.
If you're a winner,
wow.
you will not go above the culture of winning here. The
Wow.
team,
Right.
the culture. You can go down the list from the Raiders, right, to the San Francisco 49ers, to the New England Patriots. You can go down the list. Green Bay Packers. Green Bay says that this is a community-owned team.
Wow, that's huge, Tommy. I've never heard anybody say this. I've never heard anybody say this. You got the answer right now. You got the answer that bad boys ultimately feel bigger than our team because we're not winners.
Yeah.
And so they always are looking at the team like, you're lucky to have me. And you do need bad boys. I mean, Burfict, I thought Burfict was exactly the kind of animal almost that you need, man. You got to knock somebody in the head. You got to punch him in the eye. And he did that a couple of times against Pittsburgh. And I think because of our franchise, I think we still got a raw deal from the refs even, because you don't get the same benefit of the doubt because you don't have that as a reputation, and it's easy to attack you because that's not who you are. And then we cave quickly, and then we don't put the kind of restraints around a guy because we need him so bad that we can't get him to unify with our vision of winning because we've never had one.
Well, let me give you a quick example because I know we're wrapping up. So we're talking about Burfict, and we had some on the field questionable plays, calls, judgments. True. Yeah. We had Ndamukong and Sue in with the Detroit Lions, right? So he's making plays, he's kicking folks when they're down. Remember that?
Right.
Ndamukong Sue, he's wilding out. You know, he just won a Super Bowl with my Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Okay.
So that madman, if you will, when he was with Detroit, who was just as bad, if not worse than the Bengals, was subjected to, that's a bad guy. He's under a bad team, under bad management, and then went to another team that had a different culture, a different expectation, and no one heard anything about his behavior, and he's still knocking people out on the field.
Right.
Was he kicking people as much? No, he wasn't doing that.
Right.
Because there was another leader, head coach, assistant coach, special teams coach, like a positions coach, or even management that said, I know what you did in the past. We're not going to tolerate that now. We as a team are trying to win. Right. Are you trying to win? Yes, sir. Then get on the team bandwagon and get off the I bandwagon. He said, I'm team.
That's huge. So let me tie this back into culture. I'm going to give an example from a kid that I coached. I coached a kid, Trent Donald. He just called me this last week. I picked him up from the West End. I was one of his first coaches, man. And that kid, he learned how to play video games at my house. Now he's on that web-based NBA, and they've won the world championship. He just called me this last week. But oftentimes, Tommy, when he was on teams that were okay, he would lose it.
Yeah.
He'd be a bad actor. I mean, I remember one time he slammed the door, leaving one of my games, the AAU game. And so I said, well, when you slam the door out, you slam your butt right here on this bench. And, I had to cultivate him. But But I watched him, Tommy, when he finally was at Cincinnati State. And I watched him be okay even sitting on the bench because he was with a great team. And so then they had a good culture. And I would say to you that what happens is that some of the acting out we're seeing is a result of this spirit inside of people that's a huge winner, but they're in an environment that's losing, where people aren't giving the same. And so they just blow up in part in those environments. And when you take them to a different environment where other folks are fighting as hard and are great, and there's some cultural standards, then they sort of align themselves with that expectation. I would say the same thing is true in corporations, that as you create a winning culture, as you create a respectful culture, then everybody that comes in has more pressure to align themselves and operate in the way that the culture expects us. Tommy, it's been a great conversation, man.
Yes,
We've been a few places. Community, we want to thank you for weighing in and giving us some other food for thought. If you want to reach out and touch base with me, Eric Ellis, President, CEO of Integrity Development, you can call me at 513-874-6836, or you can send me an email, ericellis@integritydev.com. Tommy, how can they reach you?
And they can reach us at 513-421-2300, or give me a call, or give me an email directly, info@mipcllc.com. I want to thank the community as well. Folks are learning, and I'm learning as well. And to Brother Kendall Wright, I wasn't talking about you, brother. I love the community, man. Love it. Thank you all.
Keep talking about things that matter, and we'll see you next week. Invite somebody else to join us in diversity conversations. Take care.
Take care.